We are very honored to be hosting Amy E Reichert for the umpteenth time. And but every time is better than the last. And that is the case in terms of our turnout today. So the new book is I have to do a little prop. Once Upon a December has been out for a little bit, and she has done other events, but this is her first event that is Once Upon a December. So the book's been getting wonderful reviews. Jenny Bayless says, for those who still revel in the enchantment of the festive season, this book is for you. Friendships, romance, and magical Christmas markets abound in this feel-good novel. And I read the book, and I would say that was right. So welcome to Boswell.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to see everyone come out on this blustery evening. And thank you for supporting your independent bookstore. I'm going to have my little independent bookstore speech real quick. People at independent bookstores have been so wonderful to me this season. They're actually a little back ordered at other stores. There's copies here, plenty of copies. But so you've all been very supportive, and I want to thank you. And I like to encourage individuals, even if you don't buy my book tonight, which I would really like you to buy my books, but if you don't, at least buy something, because we need to keep these wonderful gems around.
And I will probably ask you towards the end to make some recommendations, because you're such a wonderful reader.
Well, thank you.
So we must start. Now, I'm sure, how many people have read the book already? Some, yeah, I did too. Would you like to give like an opening statement?
I can do that. So Once Upon a December, it is set in Milwaukee, and the main character, Astra, every year, she and her best friends go to the Milwaukee Christmas market, which we're just going to pretend is still going on. And this year they attend the market, and there's this new part that they don't quite remember ever being to. It's this cute little alley that has these fun shops, and there's a wonderful little Kringle bakery, because Kringle. And of course, in the bakery, because this is a romance, there are handsome men behind the counter. And one of them looks really familiar to Astra, and she doesn't ever remember being here or having met this person. But what she doesn't know is this is a magical Christmas market called the Yule Market. And one of the parts of the magic is that when people from the outside, which would be all of us, visit it, when we leave, we don't remember. So she's actually been to this Christmas market many times in the past and has met this handsome man behind the counter, whose name is Jack, many times. But something different happens this year, and she doesn't forget. And then she starts to remember. So that's kind of the gist. There's lots of friend stuff. There's a rescue dog, Kringle.
I have to say, if this event had been more of a bust, I was going to bring Kringle in. And I thought, that is too much Kringle. So
well, I will say Lisa at Books and Company had Kringle.
Oh, but she's always upstaging me. I'm not surprised. Plus, that was a launch. That's more of a party.
Yeah, that's true.
This is like we're just getting through the day. So this is you had a little speculative element in your last book.
I did.
You're like, you probably said to yourself, that wasn't speculative enough.
No.
So you went for it. Would you explain the world building that was involved in this novel?
Oh, this was so. Yes, I have to take a step back. I love fantastical elements in books. I like it when most of the world is normal, and then there's things that are just a little different. In my last book, I had a ghost, and a family that could see ghosts, not scary ghosts. I think that's important to note. And in this one, there is this magical Christmas market. And that was probably the most challenging part, was creating the rules. I have a whole new respect for people who write fantasy and have to do world building, because it is hard. And most of the things I think are very normal. I mean, they don't have superpowers other than the Yule market helps them age more slowly, or they live longer, I guess, and they age slowly. People forget. And there is some other elements that I won't get into because they play into the story about how their magic works. But it was really a challenge, because you have to make it just believable enough that At least I hope.
I'm I'm upset. So we really can't talk a little about
Well, we can like one of the features is it shows up, it hops from December to December to December. So when you live in the Yule market, it's always December. And so December 1st, it unbricks and it's in a location. It might be Milwaukee, it might be Paris, it might be someplace in Germany, and then proceeds up until midnight at Christmas Eve. And then it gets shut off from the entire world again. And they have a week of rest where the residents of the Yule market can, they have family time. They make more things for the next time they open up. What they call them Yules. These are their seasons, are each of these months is a Yule. And then when it would be New Year's Eve for the rest of the world, when it opens up again, it's December 1st again. So they repeat Decembers over and over and over again. And it'll be the same year for a while. And then all of a sudden it'll just.
I did the math on this actually. So when you said.
I hope you did.
Yes.
Because I did too.
So let's see if I've got this right. So you said at one point that they age about half the rate of people.
I think it's like 4 times as slowly. Maybe
4 times. I thought you said they lived to 160. And so I thought, oh, that's about
no,
80.
that's like how old he is.
Oh.
So the love interest is about 160. And then, but he doesn't look it.
He doesn't look it.
He doesn't. He looks like a good, strong, like 42. Really?
Okay. So that would mean that they were doing about 48 markets a year of our year.
Yes.
And it's always the same. And then suddenly
it isn't always the same. It can vary. I had actually very specific rules that I started peeling out of the book. So a lot of
I want to hear them. Hear them.
So well, they went through phases. It can be different amounts of cities each year. Like one year it might be 500 cities and the next year it might be 12. The magic is very fluid that way, which is just it's random. But there was a time where it was very specific and it was like 48.
Okay.
And I even had it in a specific order. But I changed that because it felt very specific and complicated. And people like you would do the math.
Like me, but yeah, for other people are like, I just want to know what happened, whether they fall in love or not.
Just embrace the magic.
It's no romance. They do.
They do. And that's the beauty of a Christmas romance is I do think there is a little bit of, I mean, I do, to me, the rules make sense. And I like to think that they're all there, but I do think there's an element of, we'll go with it.
Well, there's so much. I mean, really, time travel, time shifting is so popular. We were, I've now read two novels where somebody keeps going back to the same year. Una Out of Order, where she lives her life in order, and our really science fiction guy. So I don't like the book because I don't know how that works. And he wants a manual.
Yes.
And we're like,
he wants the schematics to the Death Star.
Yeah.
So he could build it himself.
I want to say wrong genre.
Wrong genre. Yes.
Yes. So one of the things I really love about the book is all the Danish culture in the book. And it's much more than Kringle. I just want to know.
It is.
Do you want to talk a little about that?
Yes. So of course I do. So I did a lot of research. I need to share it. And what's interesting about any book, I think, an author does exponentially more research than ever ends up on the page. And usually by the time I'm talking about the book, I've forgotten the majority of it. But some of the things that are in the book that were really important to me there are little Christmas gnomes, and I am a big fan of them. There's one on the cover. I'm actually wearing one right here on my little scarf thing, those little adorable gnomes that are everywhere that have a little hat over their nose. But they call them, so there's a tradition in Denmark. I was going to say Danish land, but that's not it. It's been a day. Where you leave out on Christmas Eve like a little bowl of rice pudding for the Christmas elves, because if you don't, they'll cause mischief. So there's sort of this fun little part of the Christmas traditions. And in my book, there are not real Christmas gnomes, and they're called, one is called a nizu and multiple are called Nisa. I think I got that right. Yeah, I got that right. I think
I know
it might be right. It might be reversed.
You said Nisa a lot. Oh.
Yeah. Well, because
does anyone know?
Nisa is the plural. Yeah. So then Nizu is just one.
Wisdom of crowd.
Thank you. And in my book, there are not real Christmas gnomes, but Jack carves them. Like that's one of the things he does in his downtime is he carves these little tiny Nizu out of wood, and he starts to give them over these years where Astra is visiting the Christmas market. He gives her little ones. So she like has this little collection at home that she has a vague recollection they came from the Christmas market, but doesn't really remember what stand she got them from. But it becomes a little through line in the story. So that's one of the pieces. Yeah.
Rice pudding with almonds and hot cherry sauce.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound good?
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It does actually have it's almonds again. It's like, oh, it's all the Kringle stuff.
It
It's
is.
like they
It
got
just
6
keeps coming
flavors.
back.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's a big family dinner where there's some traditional Danish things. Like they have one of the dishes are these caramelized potatoes that I have to admit I've never tried to make, but it's just round little potatoes that are cooked in some sort of sugar butter combination, and they get like a caramelized crunchy outside coating, and they sound amazing. So one of these times I'm going to try making those.
Your
Oh, yeah.
bulbs, your
Yeah.
folded paper ornaments.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Mhm.
So the question I had, okay, I have one more question about the magic market.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Bring it.
you go to the market, you buy, there's a lot of stuff for sale. It's
Yeah.
not all drinking. And so you buy a sweater,
Mhm.
you take it home, and then you go,
Where'd I get this?
yeah,
You got it at the Christmas. You remember going to the Christmas market, but you're not
don't know which
remembering.
store.
You don't remember that you were in a Stitch for Time or whatever I call the store in the market.
I think that's what you call it.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
You just know you got it at the Christmas market. And quite frankly, how many of us can be like, oh, I got this at the mall, but I don't remember where. So at least maybe that's just me.
Fair enough. One of the things as obviously as a bookseller, I really love that your protagonist is a librarian, and you were actually on the board of
I
your
am.
library.
I am. I'm also on
And-
the system board for all of Bridges, which is
Oh.
Waukesha and Jefferson, and our director's here. She's in the back. She's like,
Hey, I just want to read this Goodreads quote. It's one of the few times I've read a librarian in a romance book where the author didn't get the entire profession completely wrong.
just a little bit wrong.
And that was refreshing to read. So what kind of did you have to do? Was it all instinctive, or did you actually talk to some librarians? Did you have, as we were talking, I was telling Amy before that one of my booksellers read a baseball book that all the baseball details wrong. And so I was like, did you have a library sensitivity reader?
I did actually. The director of my library read it, and just to make sure that I hadn't done anything too egregious, and she gave it the stamp of approval. So I'll blame any errors on her. No, just kidding.
No errors.
But I did do. I mean, you pick up quite a bit when you are in board meetings for libraries, because she would come in and she would share the stories of the funny things that happen in libraries. And oh my gosh, do the things happen in libraries. It is really, really funny. And if you know any librarians, ask them for funny stories and they will fill you with so many wonderful ones.
Any librarians in the audience tonight?
Front and center.
Please
Sure.
share a story later. I guess that's public.
Yes.
So
yes.
this book takes place at so one of the ways you got out of making any mistakes is this book takes place at the Northeast Milwaukee Library, which of course doesn't exist, though it seems to be a combination of East and Shorewood,
Sure.
because it's a separate library. And
Yes.
and as you know, Shorewood was East Milwaukee before it was renamed 100 years ago or some 120 years ago. So you don't even have, we can't even say that
No.
anything's wrong.
No, that's right. Though someone did tell me that actually in the Milwaukee Public Library system, they don't call the people who run the libraries directors. I think they call them something else, managers.
No, that's in the city system.
Oh,
You would
okay.
be in a
Okay.
suburban system, you are the director.
Then I'm fine.
Yeah, you win.
All right. Woohoo!
I believe one of the Nissa carves a stack of books.
Yeah.
Did you have special, did you think about the books now Outlander seems like an obvious choice to me.
Yeah.
I was very curious about the Tom Wolfe reference. Where did that come from?
Right. What did I do?
You just said Tom
This
Wolfe.
is me
it was a
not
Tom-
remembering
It was a long time ago.
what the books
She's written
were.
3 books since
Yeah.
then.
So Jack carves a little gnome, and the gnome is carrying books. And I know there's an Outlander in there. I know there's one that's like Circle of Friends because you
Right,
know
maybe
that she's very close with her friends. I have no idea what
Yeah.
why I would have picked Tom Wolfe.
I was fascinated. I was like, it's my favorite writer.
If you,
Ugh.
does anyone know what the title is?
Well,
This
there's
is
a
what
lot
happens.
of books. I mean,
There's like 5 or
could
6
have been the right
books.
stuff
Yeah,
for all we know. Maybe space.
Are you sure it wasn't a Virginia Woolf book?
Anyone want to check? I'm pretty positive it was Tom Wolfe because I went,
Fine.
what?
About it.
Okay.
I
So,
will I'll have to look at what it is and try and find it, and I can tell you.
that's okay. I can go in another direction here.
All right.
So,
Darn it.
one of the things about working with a romance reader, which I do in Rachel, I mean, a number of people read romances here, but Rachel lives it. She runs our romance book club. She does romance conversations with authors, and except for this one, and so we talk a lot about tropes. And so one of what I was fascinated with is that there is this bad relationship trope that you have to, if the person isn't single, if they're of a certain age, and you want to show that they're desirable, I guess, they have to start out in a relationship and they have to get out of that and get in the better one. So my question was, I was kind of fascinated by this. Do you have to worry about how good or how bad that other relationship is? Because I thought, well, if the relationship is really bad, that sort of reflects on the character making bad choices. But if it's not that bad, you're pissed at them because they shouldn't really be leaving it. So did you have to?
Daniel, you have no idea the can of worms you are cracking open.
I am excited about that.
This is such a thing. You are 100% correct that if a character is of a certain age, you have to sort of establish, because if this woman is 38 and she's never been in a serious relationship of any kind, we shouldn't. That's perfectly normal. There shouldn't be judgment, but there's going to be judgment. So we do feel like we have to rationalize this. And I really struggled with that balance of how much is a bad relationship, because you're right. There are earlier versions of this book where her ex-husband was a really bad gaslighter, like was really manipulative and awful. But to your point, one, that reflects really badly on her because it makes it hard to root for such a person who would put up with that, even though that kind of thing happens all the time. And we should be maybe a little more sympathetic to those kind of people. But it also, when you have someone who's really awful and gaslighting, it's not really fun in a romantic comedy. So we felt that was a little dark and pulled back on a lot of those stuff. He is a bit of a jerk. He does use her quite a bit. And I don't read a lot of my reviews, but I will say that that is a common thing. That's like the people who are frustrated because at the beginning of the book, she's still putting up with him taking advantage of her generosity of spirit, like dropping off their dog that they share custody of at the last minute and kind of potentially ruining her weekend of fun with her girls. But I like to say that a person has to grow. And if this person is perfect from the get-go, then they have no character arc to improve and no lessons to learn.
It's a sitcom, not a romance.
That's right. Exactly. So you have really hit on something that is a big topic of conversation, I think, in romance circles about characters and with exes and how awful. Because you're right. If they're perfect, why did they leave them in the first place?
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little about your dog love.
I love Bernie.
So talk a little, because talk a little about why, Bernie represents a lot in the book. I think it's sort of perhaps a surrogate child. So talk a little about how you came to put Bernie in the book and what you were thinking about when he was there.
So first, to start out, Bernie is a girl. She is named after Astra's favorite book, Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which is also one of my favorite books because I get to do that when I write books. She is a rescue Bernese mountain dog mix. So sort of this giant glumping brown and dark and white, adorable, fluffy bundle of love. And when Astra was married to her husband, he didn't want kids and she desperately did. So the dog was sort of a substitute to try and patch something that couldn't be repaired. And when they divorced, he was spiteful and then insisted on this joint custody. So it becomes this point of battle, and it becomes this, one of the things that Astra really wants to do in the book is to get full custody of Bernie And that way she can completely cut ties with him. So there is a series of things that happen to make that go, which I had a lot of fun writing some of those.
Yeah, they're a little devious, I would say. Yeah.
Be a little illegal sometimes.
Yeah. Misdemeanors.
Yes. And I had someone ask me at a previous event, because there's one that involves peanut butter and Bernie and a really, really expensive table in the ex-husband's house. And this person wanted to know if I knew about if this would work from experience. I'm like, no, I've never done that. Still on my first husband.
Yeah. One of the also references in the book, I think that comes up a lot that ties into the Danish is Hans Christian Andersen. There's a first edition in the magical bookstore. And this sort of fits into Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, obviously. So were you thinking of a particular fairy tale? Were you like, what was your, I did actually run around saying, do we have any? Do we have any? Do we have any? Should I have a little display? But then I got tired and I didn't do it.
I don't. I did. When I was writing this, it just kept really feeling like there was a fairy tale magic element in it. Like the whole idea of a magical Christmas market felt very fairy tale. And then when we settled on the title of Once Upon a December, it kind of all clicked. But I did play, I mean, I picked Hans Christian Andersen as this book that kind of is almost magical, and it selects somebody to find it in the bookstore because you're special. And I don't want to say a whole lot more about how that goes. But I picked him for obviously his Danish connections. But then I went back and I looked at a lot of his stories, and I think some of them really resonate with the, I wish I had, I have a quote in there from The Little Match Girl. And I can't remember what it is, but it felt very resonant to some of the themes of the story. And I wish I had it in front of me.
That's okay. We'll all go back and read Hans Christian Andersen's
I
fairy
think
tales,
you should.
or watch the Danny Kaye
And I
movie or something like that.
no, I used to watch that when I was little. So that was my introduction to Hans Christian Andersen. And then, but I forgot how sad The Little Match Girl was. Devastating.
A lot of it.
So sad. Just really devastating stuff. And I guess it's all coming back to me now. I guess one of the things I really liked, because he has sacrifice as a theme in his fairy tales so very often. And I felt like that was very relevant to the story.
One of the other tropes, it's not exactly a trope, but one of the other things that happens in a lot of romances, especially if there's a series involved, and you've never really done a series, but you set us up for possibility, because you have 4 friends and you have 4 brothers.
I do.
Now, some of them are happily married, or so we think. We now know anything can be broken up. So did you think about like, who could have a story here?
I actually never ever think about writing a continuing story. First of all, I will say in my own little brain, all of my books are interconnected and exist in the same fictional version of southeastern Wisconsin. So in my little brain, they're out, for those of you that have read The Coincidence of Coconut Cake, Astra could walk down the road and go to Lou's restaurant. And for those of you that have read Coincidence of Coconut Cake, John from The Coincidence of Coconut Cake is the John that's in this book.
Oh,
so yes, I haven't had anybody like say, is this the same John? Or are you just reusing that really common name that's your husband's? Which I am not. He is, because John shows up in this book because part of the Yule market is they need somebody who's in the real world on the outside to like supply them with things when they show up in a new city. They need to have flour and sugar and butter and supplies. So they essentially have these people who help them get all the things that they need. So John is somebody who remembers it, because there are special people that will remember it, the market, and there's a reason he'll remember it. And so he's kind of their local fixer guy. Oh yeah.
I just want to say that in future books, I'd like you to be more explicit about it. And
okay.
I wouldn't mind. I am a big fan of the call out to a minor, especially if it's in the same universe already.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know how you all feel. You might say, ugh, But I just love the little
I love
call
it.
out to a minor character.
Yeah. In the Kindred Spirit Supper Club, they are drinking Sana's cider from the simplicity of cider. So those
Nice.
kind of things. show
Who knew that already?
Yeah. See,
Wow, we're learning a
I'm
lot.
clearly too subtle, but that's just little things that make me happy.
Well, I think you're excited that we're not getting it. Sort of, you're like, I did it. So you have an editor, you have an agent, you have, I'm guessing, some early readers.
I do.
Can you say who are any early readers writers?
Yes, all of them are. They didn't used to be. So my husband used to be my early reader, and which is why he takes credit for, as of now, The Coincidence of Coconut Cake is still my most successful book. So he likes to take credit because he was my primary feedback person at that time. All right, whatever. But currently, usually, I have a circle of very close writer friends. Karma Brown is one of them, Colleen Oakley, and Heather Webb. She's a historical fiction writer. And I found that over the years, having other writers who are at least adjacent to the kind of books I write is really beneficial because they understand what kind of feedback I need at the various different stages. Like I can throw out all of my crazy pitch ideas and they know how to give me feedback on, oh, that might work, that would work if you did this. I can show them my synopsises or my outlines. Or in the case of Once Upon a December, I was in the process of my developmental edits with my editor. And my editor just wasn't, I knew the feedback my editor was giving me wasn't what it needed. Like it was good, but it wasn't enough. It needed more. So I was in a panic, was able to send it off to Karma and my friend Heather, and they read it really quickly and gave me amazing feedback that lit up all the light bulbs and helped me fix things.
Are you willing to share any, without spoilers, are you willing to share any changes that happened through this process? I because I live in a multiverse world of books, and I was like, what would have happened? What if she'd gone that way? Where, like I think of a infinite number of books that could have been made from decisions, and so I'm curious about some of the changes you made.
So I think a lot of it was really taking out stuff, like taking out a lot of the explanation about how magic worked. The whole first chapter didn't exist. It had, for many, many drafts, this is probably the biggest one. I needed to have something right off the bat that sets you into the Christmas market, let you know from page 1 that this was magical, so that you knew going in. You didn't have readers that get to the second chapter and like, what? There's magic in this thing? I don't understand. Because I don't want that. I don't want people to feel like they were bamboozled. So that whole chapter came about. And then I pulled back a lot of the explanation of magic. And then I pulled back a ton of, there was a lot more with the ex-husband that I pulled out because it just wasn't the story. That is also probably the second biggest change, is there was a lot more of him in the story. And it wasn't his story. He was just this like little gnat over here we needed to get rid of. It is
so typical of him trying to take over your book.
It really is. It's very typical. Why he was horrible.
Before we go to some audience questions, if I do a conversation, I make the other person talk about books that they like. So would you talk a little reading?
Yes. So I'll give you a couple different ones. I know, and I'm just going to say this because I know she was just here, and this is not a new book. I missed when Rainbow Rowell was here a couple weeks ago, and I'm devastated because she's one of my favorite authors. And one of her earlier books is called Attachments. It might even be her debut. So it's like 12 years old. It is, most of her more recent things are young adult. This is an adult rom-com. It is very Hallmarky. It is the kind of book that whenever I start out to write a book, I want to write like this book. The premise is it's an office setting. There's 2 women that are emailing back and forth. So their part of the novel is all done via emails. And then there's a guy who his job in the company is to monitor the emails to make sure people aren't doing inappropriate things. But he starts kind of getting a crush on one of the girls in this one exchange. And then, of course, things happen. But it is so elegantly written and so charming and just perfect. To me, it's perfect. The way When Harry Met Sally is a perfect romantic comedy movie. That to me, this is a perfect romantic comedy book. I am reading The Chosen Ones right now by Veronica Roth, and I'm really, really enjoying that. That premise is 10 years ago, there was a horrible, evil, dark force. 5 young teenagers were chosen to defeat him. I think it's a him. I don't know if they've specified gender. And now it's 10 years later, and they're dealing with all the aftermath and how this has affected their lives. And it's really, I think, just a fascinating story of what happens after.
One more.
I
know you have it.
I could do this all day. What have I read recently?
Oh, it could be
All right.
What's your top book of the year?
All
right. What's your 7th favorite book of the year?
So I'm gonna do another Christmas one because it's Christmas season. This is a really saucy Christmas book. It is A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. If you don't like really, really spicy romance, don't read this. But the premise is it's an adult film star, and she, through a variety of circumstances, gets cast as the romantic lead in like a Hallmark-esque movie, because the director is somebody who used to direct her in adult films or was a producer of adult films. He's trying to break into the romantic holiday market because it's very lucrative. Hallmark's doing okay. And starring opposite is a former bad boy band star that she had a crush on when she was young, well, for her whole life. And he also has a crush on her because he has found her other work. But they have to be well behaved because this production company has a certain reputation to uphold. So it is really very charming and very positive from a lot of different angles. And it's just really sweet and funny, but it is very, very, very spicy. So I really enjoyed that book quite a bit. And it's funny.
That's the best.
It is. It's very funny. And
so-
it's written impeccably. These two women did, Julie and Sierra, just, you can't
That's
tell.
hard. Have you ever tried to do that?
No, and I won't.
Okay.
I have friends who have done joint writing and it had broken them. So I would be the one who's always late and they have to keep bugging. So I would be the disappointing one. I don't want to be a disappointment.
So before one more question, which is, if you mentioned a few other genres, if you had the chance to write outside your genre, what would you be writing?
Fantasy. And I might be trying that someday.
Okay. Will it be under your name, or will you have a pen name?
It would be A E Reichert because I'm really
Nice.
creative.
Yeah.
Because then you know it's me, but it's
Right. But you're saying
it's
different. It's
right,
different.
but different.
So I think it's time for questions. Do we have any? I know it always is a little start. You can ask the writing ritual one if you want to get off the bat. I'm not asking it because I'm leaving it for you. I'm not looking straight at you. You're just in the front. All right. And I'll repeat it.
Stealing things.
Let me repeat it so when you're writing,
Yeah.
Do you read in the genre that you're writing, or do you try to stay out away from it?
Yeah. And I don't read really anything when I'm in the depths of writing. And it's not because I'm afraid of stealing ideas. It's just because I'm so stuck in my story that I don't have, I mean, it sounds silly, but I don't have the brain space for somebody else's story. I mean, to me, watching TV and movies is different. That's just sort of staring dumbly at the screen and letting it soak in. Whereas reading is more of a joint effort. So I really don't read a lot. That doesn't concern me, but I do read a lot in the genre I'm going to be writing as I'm preparing. So I will read a lot of, like, I read Christmas books while I was preparing to write Once Upon a December, and then I watched all of the Hallmark Christmas movies.
You can't. No, I'm sorry, that's
Oh,
impossible.
No, I think I did it. And I can guarantee my mom has done it
But
because
did you watch the Lifetime ones and the Netflix ones and the
Some
Great
of
American Family ones and the
some of them I won't watch the Great American Family ones because isn't that Candace whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I won't watch hers.
All right,
She's not-
Harumph.
Harumph, yes.
Any more questions? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Classic question. I am a plantser. So for those of you that don't know, plotting is pretty clear. You plot out every detail. Pantsing is when you write by the seat of your pants. You just kind of sit at the keyboard and go. I like to sketch out my big moments and have a good 5 to 10 page outline that will include character sketches. In the case of Once Upon a December and my ghost book, a lot of the how the magic and stuff worked. But I give myself a lot of freedom that as I'm writing from tentpole to tentpole moment, if something better comes along, I can change it all. So I'm not committed to it, but I do like to know where I'm kind of going. It's important. I don't know how people sit down and just write. I have a friend that writes mysteries, Hank Philippi Ryan, and she doesn't know how her books end until she gets there.
Amy, that is actually very common. That is,
Are you kidding?
I'm not. What they do, they don't know who did it, and then when they get to do it, they go back and rewrite the book to get it to work with who did it.
That's way too much rewriting. I don't want to do that much, right? I don't want to rework it.
Well, that's not the genre for you then.
It is not the genre
Because
for me.
I think the feeling is that, and I know you didn't ask me the question, I apologize. The feeling is if you know, especially in mystery, if you know everything that happened, you make it too obvious. You write too much into it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And because if you read a lot of mysteries and thrillers, you kind of want to know. You don't want it to be like, where did that come from? But you also don't want to know by page 50 how the book ends.
So you probably have 4 or 5 characters that could do it.
Yeah.
And then you just figure it out from there. Fascinating. I need to learn more about that. That's very interesting to me.
Maybe, and then there's another book for you.
I really don't want to write a mystery.
Sorry. Second row. We have
Yeah.
them.
Well, thank you very much. That's very nice to hear.
Any questions or compliments?
Yes,
We'll
I
also
will
take
accept
those.
compliments all day long.
Go ahead. All right, let me do that. How do you decide which? And I just want you to know, I almost did when I had more energy, which is when I wasn't doing it. I was going to do a map of where all your books take place. Somebody should do that.
I agree.
A better bookseller than me, apparently. So how do you decide?
Well,
And where are you going?
That's a good point. Well, they're not all in southeastern Wisconsin because there is one in Door County and there's one in the Dells. I did have someone with the coincidence of coconut cake that Google mapped all the locations I mentioned. And I don't know if I have that link anymore, if it even exists, but that was very impressive. How I decided, just really where it makes sense. So the coincidence of coconut cake, I wanted it to be a love letter to Milwaukee. So it had to be Milwaukee. And let's see. Then the second one was kind of out in Lake Country because that's where I live. And the coffee shop there was an actual real coffee shop that I would go in and hang out in. Simplicity of Cider was Door County because Door County is beautiful and I really wanted to feature that part. And then the next one I wanted to be back in, that was sort of Tosa, but it was kind of all Optimus Guide was all around the Milwaukee area, but mainly Tosa-ish and the Polish South Side. And then Wisconsin Dells, just because everyone needs to know how crazy the Wisconsin Dells are. I think that's important. And I love it because it's equal parts beautiful and super quirky. And then when I was doing this one, I wanted to have a big enough Christmas market. It had to be in a bigger city. And I don't want to do it in Madison. And
I just want, when you look at when you Google best Christmas markets, which I did,
I did too. A lot.
and that Elkhart Lake one kept coming up, and I'm like, what? Has anyone been to the Elkhart Lake Christmas market? And can they explain to me why it's so great?
I think, and I feel like it's not outside. I feel like, or maybe that's the Lake Geneva one that's in it. One of them is in a hotel.
Yeah, I think
And
the Elkhart Lake is in the resort thing.
Yeah. So that doesn't, yes. So that didn't seem, I want it outside.
I will say that when you do start doing Googling things, you realize how many internet writers crib from other internet writers. It's the same stuff over and over again.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of lists about which Christmas markets around the world, because I've looked at a lot of them. And yeah, they're all the same, like 20.
Yeah.
These are the great ones in Europe.
Any particular, sorry about the phone. Any, I forgot to put it on mute. Any places in Wisconsin? You're not giving anything away,
No.
but have you thought that you'd like to set a book?
I think the Northwoods would be really great, because it's just large expanses of nothing and trees. But I feel like that, to me, that screams more murder mystery than women's fiction and romance. I do want to do something in Madison. My daughter goes to Madison now, so I do think that is coming. And I think that I have a feeling if I tiptoe into fantasy, I do think I'll still be in Wisconsin. And I'll probably go to some weird places, but I'm not sure where. But I've been researching a lot of really weird things that happen in the state of Wisconsin, and there's some weird stuff. We're a weird state, and I love it. Yes. Strange things.
More questions?
Wait.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
So good. Well, I mean, it is set by the Fiserv Forum, because that's where the now defunct Milwaukee Christmas market was set. And there is a little, there's a little alley where there's a beer garden. And if you go there, there's a giant expanse of brick wall, and that is where the Yule market would open. I might have pictures of it somewhere, but it's just a brick wall, so it's not very exciting. I think it would be really fun to spray paint an arch, but they might be mad if I did that. I did have I have St. Kate's Hotel. That is the hotel that my friends stay at when because they come down and then they can stay there and walk there. And I actually did stay there for a few nights when I was writing the book. It gave me an excuse to pretend I was getting, to write, but really get away from the family during COVID. Hopefully they're not watching this. What else do I have in there?
Well, you also had so many nods to Milwaukee.
Yes.
Coconut cake.
Yes, there's so many nods. I mean, I think I mentioned the Fonz at one point, because you kind of have to. I still haven't seen it in real life. Isn't that weird? Unrelated to anything, I just went to the Pabst Mansion for the first time. I've never been, and it was really lovely at Christmas. So if that's a thing that you like, highly recommend.
Christmas. Are they doing the meal this year?
I don't know if they're doing the meal. We just took my mom and my sister we took my mom and walked around. The docents are so helpful. It's almost like you can't stop them from chiming in.
The director is one of my favorite people.
Yeah, it was really, really amazing. And we tried to there's a room where there's hidden cabinets in the wall. And I was trying to find him and I got yelled at. That shouldn't surprise anybody.
Well, I put the question back to you. Does anyone have a place? Because there'll be more Wisconsin books. I don't know if you caught that. Is there a place that you feel like should be featured in a future Amy E Reichert book? Oh,
I have never been. Isn't that where the ice caves are? Oh, that would be fun. Ooh.
I'm hearing right off.
I'm hearing right off. Yes. That is the best part. That's the best part about being a writer is all the books I buy, all the cider I did for my research on my cider book. Yeah.
Any more questions? Oh, go ahead.
I think it's in this like 150 to 250, smallish. Definitely smallish. They don't reproduce a lot.
This is the magical part
The
of the Christmas
magical,
market.
the magical Christmas market. Yeah, because they're pretty small. Because there's really only, you're gonna make me do math. I mean, there's like 7, 8 shops, and then there's a couple stands, and then they of course have other family and then retired members. Yeah, so I think I did the math once, and it was like somewhere around 150 to 250. Yeah, but it's definitely a small, very tight knit community. They're very selective about people they would let in, and it's if you can't leave, like you're in it. If you leave, there's some problems that can happen.
You can leave.
You can, but things happen.
It's not great.
And that, yeah, it messes with the magic if you leave. Yes. Yes. Someone can stay. Yes. Outsiders can stay. Absolutely. But then you're like, now once you stay, you are a member of the Yule market and the same rules apply to you. So leaving is challenging. That sounds awful. It's not a cult. I promise it's not a cult. It's not bad, though. That would be a fun twist. That would be another angle to this. That's another possibility. One of those 1 million books that it could have been. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yes. I've never been there.
All right, maybe one more question if we get. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we are going.
We did that good. They have no questions.
They're like, I'm speechless.
They just want to
But
read the
not
book.
necessarily in a good way. I don't know. I hope. We have left plenty of time for signing. So we have we're gonna if we played our cards right. There's this, or there's some run in there. We have a signing table up front. You can buy your books from us, or if you brought yours from home, that's fine too. We will thank you very much for being part of our holiday season.
Thank you for having me. It is always a delight to come here.
A pleasure. And we also thank all of you, because we wouldn't have a bookstore without you. We hope to see you at another event.
Yeah.
And happy December, everybody.